Hey guys, tonight we are going to step into the filthy, chaotic, utterly bizarre world of medieval goose herding. Imagine this: damp straw beneath your feet, the sharp scent of feathers and manure in the air, and a small army of honking, biting birds staring you down before sunrise. You are about to wrangle them through bandits, mudslides, and squabbling merchants just to sell them at market. And you probably will not survive this day with your dignity intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you are listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with a start in your drafty cottage, cold air nipping at your skin. A thin dawn light barely pierces the gaps between the warped wooden shutters. Somewhere beyond the walls, an impatient chorus of honks begins to rise. Your geese, already stirring in the pen. Today is market day. A single silver coin might feed your family for a week if the sale goes well. But first, you must get those feathered fiends to town in one piece. You grope for your woolen tunic and well-worn boots. They are still damp from yesterday's rain, but there is no time to fuss. The hearth has long since gone cold. You swallow a crust of stale bread, wash it down with water that tastes faintly of the wooden bucket, and head out into the pre-dawn gloom. Outside, the ground squelches beneath your feet. Last night's drizzle turned the yard into a sucking mire. The air is sharp with frost. Across the pen, 40-odd white geese mill about, already suspicious. They know what day it is. Herding geese to market is no gentle country stroll. These birds, descendants of wild greylag geese, are hardy, headstrong, and fiercely territorial. One wrong move, and they will scatter like leaves in a gale. Worse, they can and will bite with beaks sharp enough to bruise and wings strong enough to knock a child flat. You grab your staff, a knotted stick smoothed by years of nervous handling, and the long braided rope you will need to guide the gaggle. Historians still argue whether medieval goose herders used bells, whistles, or songs to control their flocks. Some sources claim a rhythmic chant kept them calm, while others suggest shrill whistles were more effective. You rely on muttered curses and sheer force of will. As you unlatch the gate, the geese eye you warily. They remember. Last month's market run ended in a chaotic chase through the woods after a careless apprentice left the gate ajar. You have no apprentice today, just yourself, 40 geese, and a 10-mile slog ahead. One by one, you nudge them forward with the staff. The first few step out uncertainly, necks craned. The rest soon follow in a waddling wave. The sheer noise is overwhelming. A rising cacophony of honks, squawks, and the slap of webbed feet against mud. Your neighbors peek out from their windows, amused by your early morning struggle. Goose herders are a peculiar breed, both admired and ridiculed. It is a dangerous, dirty trade, but the rewards can be substantial if you make it to market. In parts of medieval Europe, particularly England and Germany, Geese were prized not just for their meat, but for their fat, feathers, and quills. A well-fattened goose could fetch a price equivalent to a week's wages for a laborer, and in lean times, the demand soared even higher. Wealthy households might order dozens of birds for feasts, while merchants traded goose quills across the continent for riding. But none of that matters if you cannot get your flock there. You glance at the sky. Clouds loom low, tinged purple with dawn. If rain comes, the road will become even more treacherous. Worse still, you must pass through two rival villages whose boys have a fondness for harassing passing herders. And then there are the toll bridges, where unscrupulous guards have been known to demand not just coin, but a bird or two as an unofficial fee. You sigh and begin the long trudge toward the main road, staff tapping rhythmically against the ground. The geese follow in a loose formation, honking irritably, but moving for now. The trick is to keep them moving too fast, and they panic, too slow, and they scatter. Every step requires patience and constant vigilance. About a mile out, you pause to catch your breath. A farmer passes with a cart of turnips and offers a wry smile. Off to market, eh? Keep an eye out near the old mill. Heard there's a gang about. You nod grimly. The threat is real. Goose flocks have been stolen en route before, leaving herders penniless and humiliated. You press on, feet sinking deeper into the rutted path. The geese begin to stray, pecking at weeds along the roadside. With a sharp tap of a staff and a hoarse shout, you bring them back in line. The staff is your best friend today, an extension of your arm, your authority. Without it, you would be just another fool being herded by the geese. As the sun creeps higher, the world around you stirs to life. Farmers head to their fields. Merchants roll out carts laden with wares. The road grows busier and more hazardous. Other herders pass with pigs, sheep, and cattle, each animal presenting its own chaotic energy to the mix. One rogue pig charges through your line, causing a brief, frantic shuffle before order is restored. You shake your head. It will only get worse closer to town. You can already hear the distant clamor of bells and voices. The market waits, but so do the obstacles between here and there. You trudge forward, staff in hand, as the first rays of sunlight pierce through the low hanging mist. The geese, despite their initial reluctance, seem to settle into a rhythm of sorts. They waddle and honk, occasionally jostling one another, occasionally pausing to investigate something invisible to your human eyes. You sigh. It is going to be a long day. As the road stretches out before you, it is worth reminding yourself why you put up with this madness at all. The humble goose, after all, is no mere barnyard nuisance. In medieval Europe, it is a bird of great consequence, a creature that bridges the worlds of the peasant and the noble alike. Fat and flavorful, a plump goose graces many a lord's table during feast days, its golden skin gleaming beneath sprigs of herbs. The fat rendered from its body is prized for cooking, candle making, and even as a skin salve. The feathers, especially the down, are in constant demand for bedding. A fine goose down pillow or quilt is a coveted luxury, one that the merchant class and nobility will pay handsomely to acquire. And the quills. Let us not forget the quills. The best writing quills come from goose feathers, painstakingly selected and cured by skilled craftsmen. In a world where the written word holds immense power, from royal decrees to illuminated manuscripts, a well-made quill is a tool of influence and prestige. Of course, none of this high-minded utility matters to the birds themselves. They remain stubborn, quarrelsome, and entirely indifferent to their economic value. You glance at your flock, who are now eyeing a muddy puddle with suspicious glee. With a weary groan, you steer them around it. Historians still argue whether certain medieval goose breeds were selectively bred for temperament as much as size. Some sources hint that quieter, more docile birds were favored by herders for ease of transport, while others suggest that hardiness and weight were paramount. Judging by your current gaggle, no one seems to have prioritized manners. Ahead, the road narrows between two hedgerows. This is where things often go awry. You quicken your pace, staff held horizontally to block escape routes. The geese bunch together, honking in protest. One bold gander nips at your boot. You resist the urge to kick back. Experience has taught you that retaliation only emboldens them. Through the hedgerows and onto a broader stretch of path, you breathe a small sigh of relief. The morning has warmed slightly, lifting the fog and bringing the landscape into sharper focus. Fields of barley ripple in the breeze, and in the distance, you can just make out the spires of the town. The market square beckons, but your troubles are far from over. Word travels fast among country folk, and where there is a flock of market-bound geese, there are often disputes. You glance warily at the crossroads ahead. A cluster of villagers loiters near a stone well, their conversation halting as you approach. Among them, you spot Willem, a rival herder with a reputation for sharp dealings and an even sharper temper. Willem eyes your flock, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Fine birds you have there," he calls out, voice oily with feigned politeness. "Shame if one or two were to wander off." You grip your staff tighter. Goose ownership disputes are no laughing matter. In this region, geese are often marked subtly, perhaps a clipped feather, a dab of dye, or a unique leg band. But marks can be altered and claims contested. Fights have broken out over less. Just last year, a herder from the next village accused a merchant of selling stolen geese. The argument turned bloody, and both men spent a fortnight in the stocks. You have no desire to share their fate. With a nod that is more warning than greeting, you press forward, keeping your flock tight. Willem follows for a moment, then peels away with a chuckle. The tension in your shoulders eases, but only slightly. The day is still young, and such encounters are part of the brutal dance of medieval market life. As you guide the geese onward, a curious fact crosses your mind. A small piece of goose lore you once overheard in the tavern. In parts of Scotland, it was believed that geese migrating over the sea transformed into barnacles, attaching themselves to driftwood and later hatching as birds. Ridiculous, of course, but such tales reflect the deep connection and mystery that geese held in medieval imagination. Your reverie is broken by a sudden commotion. A farmer's dog, a wiry terrier, darts from a nearby yard, yapping furiously. The geese explode into a chorus of alarmed honks, wings flapping wildly. You leap into action, staff swinging to corral the panicked flock. It takes precious minutes to restore order. The dog's owner emerges, red-faced, offering a gruff apology and a half-hearted tug on the dog's collar. You grit your teeth and move on. Every delay risks your place at the market, where the best stalls fill quickly and the choicest buyers arrive early. The sun climbs higher, drawing beads of sweat beneath your woolen collar. The road, though dry for now, is rutted and uneven. More than once, you stumble, barely catching yourself before falling into the muck. The geese, of course, seem to revel in every opportunity to veer off course. Patience, you remind yourself, one step at a time. You glance once more toward the distant town, its silhouette now sharper against the brightening sky. The journey is far from over, but you are determined. After all, there is silver to be earned, a household to support, and perhaps, if fortune favors you, a tale worth sharing over ale at the inn tonight. With a steadying breath, you adjust your grip on the staff and press on, the ceaseless chorus of honks urging you forward. You shift your staff from one hand to the other, fingers stiff and aching from the constant vigilance required to keep the gaggle in line. The road has widened somewhat now, but with this comes new hazards. Foot traffic is increasing, and carts rumble by at an alarming pace. Horses snort and paw the ground as they pass, their towering presence sending nervous ripples through your flock. Your mind turns to your tools. The staff is an old friend, ashwood, light but strong, worn smooth from years of use. You have wrapped the handle in scraps of leather to prevent blisters. The long rope looped over your shoulder is your insurance against complete disaster. Should the geese bolt, as they are wont to do, you can attempt to lasso a few and regain control. You also carry a pouch of grain slung at your hip. A simple trick, scatter a handful when morale dips, and the birds will regroup around it, distracted just long enough for you to gather them again. Some herders swear by other methods. A bag of pebbles to shake for noise, a small bell to signal turns. Historians still argue whether goose herders in medieval England adopted such techniques from older Roman practices or developed them independently. The evidence is sparse and often contradictory. As you move along the road, you spy another herder in the distance, struggling with a much larger flock. This one employs a second person, a youth who flanks the birds from behind. You feel a stab of envy. An extra pair of hands would be welcome, but today you are alone. The staff serves multiple purposes. You tap the ground rhythmically to establish a pace, swing it gently to nudge stragglers, and raise it high when signaling a halt. Over time, most of the geese have learned to respond, though there are always a few rebels determined to test your patience. One such gander, a hulking white brute you privately call the General, has begun veering toward a thicket of brambles. You grit your teeth and move to intercept. With a sharp swish of the staff and a curt shout, you redirect him, though not without a glare that seems almost intelligent. You make a mental note to keep an eye on him. As you continue, the sun climbs higher, warming the earth and releasing the pungent scent of damp soil, trampled grass, and, inevitably, goose droppings. Your boots are already caked with the stuff, each step accompanied by a squelch that you try to ignore. The road is littered with it, a testament to the many herders who have passed this way. And here lies one of the peculiar, lesser-known hazards of goose herding: the droppings. Slick, plentiful, and sometimes alarmingly adhesive, they turn otherwise solid ground into a treacherous skating rink. More than one novice herder has earned a broken limb from an ill-placed step. You tread carefully, staff probing ahead when the path grows uncertain. You remember an old tale, likely exaggerated, of a knight who slipped on goose droppings in full armor and had to be extricated with ropes and a winch. The image always brings a chuckle, even now. Your humor is short-lived. Ahead, a sharp bend in the road leads to a small stone bridge, the first real choke point of the journey. The bridge is narrow, with crumbling parapets and space enough for only one herd at a time. If another flock arrives, a standoff is inevitable. You quicken your pace, urging the geese forward. The general resists, flapping indignantly. A few younger birds begin to lag. With practiced movements, you scatter a pinch of grain, drawing them back into formation. The seconds tick by. Just as you reach the bridge, a farmer with a pair of stubborn oxen rounds the corner from the opposite side. You exchange a glance, an unspoken contest of wills. The farmer gestures for you to cross first, muttering about bloody birds under his breath. You nod your thanks and press on. Crossing the bridge is an exercise in nerves. The geese dislike the narrow stone walls and the echo of their own honks. Some attempt to turn back. Others surge forward. You hold your breath, staff working overtime to maintain order. One slip, one bird over the side, and chaos will reign. By sheer determination and a fair bit of luck, you reach the far side intact. You release a long sigh, shoulders loosening slightly. There will be many more such moments before the day is done. The road beyond the bridge runs between low stone walls, fields stretching out on either side. The landscape is dotted with grazing sheep and the occasional curious crow. You allow the geese a brief respite, slowing your pace to let them regroup. As you walk, an elderly traveler approaches, leaning heavily on a carved staff. He eyes your flock with mild amusement. "A fine lot," he says, voice raspy. "You know, some say the Romans trained geese to guard their temples." You smile. "I have heard the same. Would that mine were so disciplined." The old man chuckles and shuffles on. The tale, though half legend, holds a kernel of truth. Geese were indeed used as guards in ancient times, their keen eyes and piercing honks making them excellent sentinels. It is said that a flock of geese once saved Rome from a nighttime raid by the Gauls. Your own geese, alas, are more interested in foraging than defending the Republic. They eye every tuft of grass and patch of mud as though it hides some vital treasure. You shepherd them onward, grateful for the brief moment of camaraderie with the old traveler. The sun is nearly at its zenith now, The town still lies a few miles ahead, its towers shimmering in the heat haze. The road will soon grow busier. The challenge is greater. You roll your shoulders, adjust your grip on the staff, and brace yourself for the next leg of this arduous journey. One flock, one staff, one very determined herder. The market awaits. You wipe a sleeve across your brow, pushing back a mix of sweat and dust as the midday sun beats down with increasing ferocity. The geese plod onward, webbed feet slapping against the baked earth. You adjust your grip on the staff once again. There is no room for fatigue when managing this quarrelsome crew. The road curves gently toward a cluster of thatched cottages, signaling the outskirts of a small hamlet. A familiar sense of wariness prickles at your skin. You have been through here before, and it has not always ended well. This hamlet has a reputation not for its charm or its hospitality, but for its inhabitants' keen interest in other people's geese. Ownership disputes here are practically a local sport. Sure enough, as you guide the flock past the first cottage, a pair of sharp-eyed women emerge, baskets on their hips, gazes flicking pointedly between the birds. One whispers to the other, and you catch a single, dangerous word: ours. You stiffen. This is how it begins. Goose ownership disputes were a common and thorny issue in medieval life. Birds often wandered freely between properties, breeding with other flocks, creating endless confusion about who truly owned which goose. The situation was worsened by the lack of clear markings and the communal nature of village life. In theory, every goose should be marked, clipped wings in a distinctive pattern, a smear of dye, or even a small woven band around a leg. In practice, markings wore off, or faked, or conveniently forgotten when a fat, healthy bird was in question. And of course, some villagers simply preferred to stake their claims in person, loudly and with threats. You keep the staff low and moving, urging your birds forward. The two women step closer. That gander there, one says, pointing to the general. He was my husband's bird, stolen last Michaelmas. You offer a cold smile. This gander was hatched in my yard, marked last spring. You must be mistaken. Mistaken? Am I? The woman huffs, stepping into your path. Historians still argue whether market law trumps local claim when it comes to livestock on the road, she says archly, with a glance at her companion. You marvel grimly at her casual reference to the ongoing debate among local jurists. It is true, medieval markets often operated under royal charters that granted them legal supremacy for transactions made within their bounds. But outside those walls, matters remained murky. The tension is rising fast. Villagers are beginning to gather, sensing potential drama. You know better than to escalate. Force rarely serves the herder well in such situations. Instead, you adopt a measured tone. My flock is accounted for and bound for the king's market, you say. If you have cause to dispute ownership, you may take it to the reeve, but touch these geese, and it will be you explaining yourself before the bailiff. A bluff, perhaps, but a calculated one. The last thing most villagers want is to be dragged into formal proceedings. The women exchange looks, weighing their options. The second one shrugs, and with a final glare, they step aside. You waste no time. With a barked command and a swirl of the staff, you hustle the flock forward. The general emits an indignant honk but obeys. As you move away from the hamlet, your pulse gradually steadies. Goose disputes are exhausting, mentally more than physically. It is one thing to battle mud and weather, quite another to outwit those with sharp tongues and sharper eyes. The road opens up again, bordered now by hedgerows humming with bees. You allow the pace to ease slightly. The geese take the opportunity to forage along the verge. You let them. A little indulgence now will pay dividends later when you need their energy for the final push. You reflect, with no small irony, on how valuable these temperamental birds have become. In the Middle Ages, a prime goose could fetch enough to pay your taxes for a season. Demand was high, particularly as the church's numerous fasting days forbade the consumption of four-legged animals, but not fowl. Clever cooks devised rich goose dishes to circumvent such restrictions, recipes that found favor even among the nobility. Moreover, the feather trade flourished. Goose feathers were shipped by the sackful to London, Paris, and beyond. Quills were in near constant demand for scribes and scholars. Even the simple act of writing the laws that governed your trade relied, ironically, on the very birds you are now coaxing along this dusty road. A shout ahead breaks your reverie. You squint against the sun. A man is waving from beneath a crooked wooden sign, a tavern. He beckons you over with exaggerated enthusiasm. You shake your head firmly. Stopping here would invite trouble. The tavern keeper is known to ply herders with free ale, only to claim a goose or two as payment when the drink clouds their judgment. You press on, ignoring the call. Not today. Not when you are this close. A ways further on, the road forks around a shallow stream. The usual stone crossing is half submerged. Recent rains must have swelled the banks. The geese mill uncertainly at the water's edge. Some begin to wade in, while others balk and honk in confusion. Here, another ancient debate comes to mind. Historians still argue whether medieval goose herders preferred to drive their flocks through water crossings to clean their feet and feathers, or whether they avoided such hazards to prevent illness. You suspect the answer is, it depends entirely on the day. Today, you have little choice. You wade in first, boots filling with cold water. With much flapping and honking, the geese follow. The stream is shallow, but the current tugs at their feet, causing some to drift off course. You move quickly, staff sweeping side to side, guiding the stragglers back to the group. Your boots squelch miserably with each step. The general paddles with grim determination, leading the charge. Finally, you emerge on the far bank, dripping and breathless. The geese shake themselves off, sending droplets flying. You give them a moment to recover before setting off again. The town lies only a few miles ahead now, but the road grows busier by the hour, and the true challenges of market day are yet to come. You steel yourself, grip your staff tighter, and continue onward, geese in tow. You press on, each step heavy with waterlogged boots, squelching in rhythm with the slap of webbed feet behind you. The geese, ever adaptable, seem reinvigorated by their unexpected bath, plumage sleek, heads bobbing with fresh vigor. You, however, feel every ounce of damp wool clinging to your skin. Still, the goal draws nearer. The market spires now loom unmistakably in the distance, framed against a pale summer sky. The road hums with growing life. Traders driving carts, shepherds with flocks of sheep, and fellow goose herders all converging toward the same bustling center of commerce. You adjust your pace, mindful that too much speed will wear the birds out, while too slow a pace risks losing a good market spot. Timing is an art here, one honed through years of weary travel and hard-won experience. You draw upon a mental map of the town's rhythms: when the gates open, when the prime buyers arrive, when the reeve begins his rounds. A sudden shout cuts through your thoughts. "Hoy! Mind your birds!" You glance up just in time to see a wooden cart careening toward you, its driver urging a reluctant pair of mules through the throng. The wheels churn through dust and dung alike, sending a spray of muck toward your feet. You swing the staff into a defensive arc, herding the geese hastily to one side of the road. One young gosling, barely out of its downy phase, squeaks and bolts the other way. You lunge after it, staff hooking gently around its body to guide it back. The cart rumbles past in a cloud of curses and laughter, the driver oblivious to your glare. You take a moment to regroup, heart racing. The market road is no place for hesitation. You pat the gosling reassuringly before nudging it back into the flock. As you continue, you reflect on the brutal realities of medieval market law. Once within the market bounds, protections are in place. Debtors cannot be seized. Disputes must follow certain forms, and goods, including geese, fall under the watchful eye of the reeve. Outside these bounds, however, it is every herder for themselves. The stretch between the last gate and the market square is notorious. Here, thieves and opportunists lurk, eager to swipe an unguarded bird or stir a dispute they can exploit for gain. You tighten your formation, moving the flock closer to the road's edge, where a low stone wall offers some protection. An odd sight draws your attention: a man in a patched cloak standing atop a barrel, loudly proclaiming the virtues of a new kind of goose harness. The contraption, a tangled mess of leather straps and wooden dowels, dangles from his hand as he extols its ability to guide even the most rebellious gander with ease. Historians still argue whether such devices were ever genuinely used, or were merely the medieval equivalent of snake oil. You suspect the latter. The general certainly would not take kindly to being trussed up like a roast. You move past the salesman, stifling a chuckle as he targets another hapless herder. You are entering a dense knot of traffic now. Cattle low mournfully, sheep bleat, merchants shout their wares. The air is thick with a heady blend of smells: sweat, spices, ripe fruit, and less pleasant odors best left unexamined. You scan the crowd constantly. An unattended child darts dangerously close to the geese, hands outstretched in gleeful mischief. With a swift sidestep, you interpose yourself, staff tapping the ground sharply. The child yelps and scampers back to its mother, who shoots you a withering look. No time for apologies, you press forward. The general lets out a low, defiant honk, perhaps sensing your tension. You meet his gaze, not yet. You mutter under your breath, save it for the square. The road widens again, revealing the first signs of the outer market. Here, makeshift stalls line the roadside, their owners hawking cheap trinkets, worn tools, and second-hand garments. It is tempting to linger, but you resist. Every moment counts now. You edge the geese through a narrow gap between a pottery stall and a tinker's cart, apologizing where necessary, but keeping your eyes fixed ahead. The clang of a hammer on metal rings out nearby, setting some of the birds on edge. You move quickly, minimizing their exposure to the noise. Another curious tidbit crosses your mind. In certain German towns, it was once customary to parade the finest geese through the streets before market opened, a display of pride and a subtle form of advertisement. Whether this practice truly attracted better buyers is a matter of debate, but the spectacle lives on in local festivals even today. You imagine leading the general in such a parade. The thought nearly makes you laugh aloud, but laughter turns quickly to vigilance. You have reached the edge of the formal market bounds now, marked by a weathered stone archway through which all traders must pass. Beyond it lies the relative safety of the market square proper. Here, at last, your birds are protected by the charters and laws governing fair trade. You pause just before the archway, giving your flock a moment to gather. A deep breath steadies your nerves. You have shepherded them through mud, disputes, near mishaps, and an unforgiving road. Now comes the final test, navigating the market itself. With a quiet word and a guiding tap of the staff, you lead the geese beneath the arch. The din of the marketplace swells to greet you, a cacophony of life and commerce. You are in, but as you well know, your work is far from finished. In this crowded, cutthroat arena, the real battle begins. You step fully into the market square, heart thudding in time with the surrounding din. The geese fan out slightly behind you, eyes darting in all directions, as if they too sense the change in atmosphere. Here, beneath the towering spires and fluttering pennants, the medieval market reveals its true nature, a heaving, chaotic beast of commerce. The air thrums with overlapping voices, traders haggling, buyers exclaiming, hawkers extolling the virtues of their wares. The ground beneath your boots is a patchwork of cobbles, straw, and mud. The scent is near overwhelming. Roasting meat mingles with fish and herbs, all undercut by the rank tang of unwashed bodies pressed close in the summer heat. Above it all, the cries of market criers ring out, announcing everything from royal decrees to lost purses. You guide your geese toward the livestock section, weaving between stalls stacked with bolts of cloth and pyramids of fruit. The staff taps out a gentle rhythm, part signal, part reassurance for your birds who are already flustered by the crowd. Ahead, a broad wooden fence encloses the poultry pens. Within this designated area, herders display their flocks for buyers and officials alike. You must secure a good spot. Visibility is everything, but the path is blocked. Two herders have halted mid-aisle, engaged in a heated argument over stall space. Their flocks mill anxiously, feathers flying as tempers fray. You say, it is a familiar scene. Historians still argue whether the chaotic nature of medieval markets was exacerbated by poor regulation or was simply an accepted reality of the time. Given what you witness here, you lean toward the latter. You consider your options, forcing your way through risks, scattering the geese, a disaster in this throng. Waiting, however, might cost you the prime pen you seek. A sharp whistle to your right draws your attention. An older herder you recognize, a wiry man known as Aldrich, catches your eye and gestures toward a narrow gap along the fence. You nod gratefully and steer your flock that way, skirting the dispute with careful footwork. As you approach the poultry pens, the reeve himself strides into view, a tall man in a faded green surcoat, ledger tucked beneath one arm. His keen gaze sweeps the square, noting arrivals, disputes, and most importantly, taxable goods. You straighten instinctively. The reeve holds considerable power here. Not only does he collect market tolls, but his word can settle ownership disputes and ban sellers from future markets. You have seen more than one careless herder driven from the square in disgrace. You catch the reeve's eye and incline your head respectfully. He nods in return, a small but welcome acknowledgement. Finding a narrow strip of unclaimed space along the fence, you swiftly move the geese inside. With practiced ease, you uncoil the rope from your shoulder and string it across the opening, creating a makeshift barrier. The birds settle somewhat, though the general eyes you balefully from the front of the flock. You lean against the fence for a moment, catching your breath. The hardest part of the journey is over, but the day's work is far from done. Now comes the long game, attracting buyers, warding off thieves, and ensuring you fetch a fair price for your weary charges. A soft voice breaks your thoughts. Fine geese there. You turn to find a merchant appraising the flock with a practiced eye. His robes are finer than most, edged with silver thread, a sign of wealth. More telling, though, are his ink-stained fingers. A scribe, perhaps, or a stationer seeking quills. Fat and well-marked, you reply. Traveled clean from the farm, no illness. The merchant nods thoughtfully. Quills, mostly, though the missus fancies a roast for St. Martin's feast. You discuss price, careful not to show too much eagerness. Negotiation here is a subtle dance, each word a step toward or away from a sale. You know that patience often pays. As you talk, you remain alert to the flow of the crowd. Pickpockets are a constant threat, particularly to distracted herders. It is said that the best thieves could lift a coin purse from beneath a goose's wing, and while that may be an exaggeration, the danger is real. You adjust your stance so that the pouch of grain at your hip is pressed safely against the fence. Your eyes scan for familiar faces, both friend and potential foe. A sudden commotion at the far end of the pen draws your gaze. Two rival herders have come to blows over a disputed gander, feathers flying as fists swing. The reeve strides in with two guards, breaking up the scuffle with stern words. One herder is hauled away, still shouting about stolen stock. You shake your head. The market is no place for hot tempers. Better to keep your wits about you and your geese close. As the afternoon wears on, more buyers drift through. Some pause, haggle, move on a few strike bargains. You sell a pair of young ganders to a cook from the local inn, and 3 fat hens to a feather merchant. The general remains stubbornly unsold. His size and bearing make him less appealing to those seeking table birds. You find this oddly satisfying. He has earned a reprieve for his stubborn loyalty. A curious tidbit crosses your mind as you wait. In certain parts of medieval France, it was believed that a goose's honk could ward off evil spirits. Some buyers even sought out particularly loud birds for this purpose. Whether superstition or shrewd marketing, you are tempted to employ the notion yourself. As the sun dips lower, shadows stretch across the square. You count your remaining birds, fewer now, but enough to justify the journey. Your pouch is heavier with coins, though the weight on your shoulders remains. There is still one final task: to settle accounts with the reeve and ensure your name remains in good standing. You gather your records and prepare to cross the square once more, weaving through the waning throng with care. The market may be winding down, but for a herder, the day is not yet done, and neither, it seems, is your vigilance. You ease away from the pen, coins tucked securely beneath your tunic. The geese you have not sold remain penned, and surprisingly calm, perhaps as tired as you. The general watches you with his usual blend of suspicion and superiority. You suspect he is convinced he orchestrated the entire operation. Now you must settle with the reeve. No seller leaves this market without paying the toll and registering their transactions. Skipping this step is unthinkable. Punishment ranges from fines to public humiliation. Worse, it could mean exclusion from future markets, which for a herder is professional ruin. You weave through the ebbing crowd, staff in hand more as a walking stick now than a herding tool. The square's earlier frenzy has begun to soften. Buyers carry bundled wares, hawkers pack their carts, and the cries of last call ring from scattered corners. The air smells of trampled herbs, warm bread, and tired animals. At the far side of the square stands the reeve's table, a stout oak structure flanked by 2 guards. A rough canopy shields it from the sun. Behind it sits the reeve, quill in hand, ledger open. Beside him, an assistant counts coins and scribes receipts with brisk efficiency. The line is not long, but it moves slowly. The reeve examines each transaction with maddening care. Historians still argue whether this thoroughness was born of duty or sheer love of power. Watching him now, you suspect a little of both. Ahead of you, a stout butcher argues over the toll on his cattle. The reeve remains unmoved, fingers drumming a patient rhythm on the table. You suppress a smile. Arguing with the reeve is as productive as herding cats. Finally, your turn arrives. The reeve glances up, eyes sharp. Ah, goose herder. A fair showing today? You incline your head. Fair enough, my lord. 10 geese sold, 15 remaining. Markings in order? You nod again, producing your tally sheet, a rough parchment listing each sale. The reeve inspects it, lips pursed. His assistant counts out the appropriate toll. 1 coin per bird sold, another for the privilege of market space. You hand over the required coins. The reeve weighs them, then slides them into a heavy chest at his side. "All in order," he says, jotting a neat line in the ledger. "Your name?" You give it. The assistant records it with a flourish. "May your flock grow fat," the reeve says, a rare smile flickering across his face. You resist the urge to make a sarcastic reply about your waterlogged boots. Instead, you thank him and step away, the weight of obligation lifted. Returning to your pen, you find the geese resting in the lengthening shade. You lean against the fence and allow yourself a rare moment of satisfaction. The hardest part is done. Survival through market day is no small feat. A merchant from Flanders approaches, eyeing your birds. You recognize his type, one of the traveling traders who specialize in buying up surplus stock for distant markets. His French accented greeting confirms it. "Good geese, friend. How many will you part with?" You discuss terms carefully. The Flemish are sharp negotiators. However, today, you have the advantage. Many local herders sold early or lost birds in the chaos. Your remaining geese are among the best still available. You settle on a price for 10 birds, slightly higher than market average. The merchant counts out heavy silver coins with care. You call the general aside with a low whistle. He is not included in this deal. As the merchant's porters collect the chosen geese, you reflect again on how far these birds travel. Goose quills from this market may end up in Parisian scriptoria or English abbeys. Their meat may grace noble feasts as far as Bruges. It is a strange, humbling thought. Nearby, a young apprentice in a tanner's apron listens to the transaction with wide eyes. "Is it true," he asks hesitantly, "that some goose herders feed their flocks special herbs to fatten them faster?" You chuckle. "Some do. Fennel and rue are common, though opinions differ. Historians still argue whether it truly makes the meat better or simply keeps the birds from straying too far." The boy nods solemnly, as if absorbing a deep secret. You consider telling him about the more eccentric practices, like singing to the geese or rubbing their feathers with scented oils, but decide to leave some mysteries intact. The market begins to thin as twilight approaches. Torches flicker to life, their smoke mingling with the dusk. You pack away the rope and adjust your satchel, coins clinking softly inside. You glance at the general. "Time to go, old friend." The remaining geese, now few in number, are easier to manage. You lead them from the pen with practiced taps of the staff, nodding to familiar faces as you pass. The reeve watches from his table, eyes glinting in the torchlight. Exiting the market square, you feel the familiar blend of relief and fatigue. The road ahead will be quieter now, but no less demanding. Geese must be returned or delivered, and the next market already beckons on the horizon. A final thought lingers as you trudge toward the gate. Amid the mud, disputes, and weary miles, you remain part of a strange and enduring tradition. Goose herders have walked these roads for centuries and will, you suspect, long after your own staff is hung by the hearth. The general honks softly, as if in agreement. You smile and press on into the deepening night. The market square fades behind you, swallowed by the gloaming. Your boots strike a steadier rhythm now, the day's urgency replaced by the slow exhale of a task completed. The remaining geese, led by the general, fall into an easy line behind you. Tired? Yes, but content. You cannot help but feel a small swell of pride. You follow a well-worn path, skirting the town's outer walls, aiming for the herders' encampment beyond the north gate. There, a loose community of traders, shepherds, and fellow goose herders sets camp each market night. Fires flicker already in the distance, their glow welcoming after the market's harsh glare. As you walk, your thoughts drift. The coins now safely tucked away mark a successful day, but success in this trade is fleeting. The next market always looms, and with it new risks and rivalries. It is no secret that goose herders, though vital to medieval commerce, occupy a curious social niche, respected for their skill, yet viewed with suspicion by townsfolk who find the birds' clamor and their herders' rough manners disruptive. Historians still argue whether this ambivalence stemmed more from the noise of the geese or the herder's reputation for boisterous revelry. You suspect a bit of both. A sudden gust carries the scent of wood smoke and roasting meat. Your stomach rumbles, another reminder of the long day. You hasten your pace, staff clicking softly on the stones. Reaching the encampment, you are greeted by familiar faces. Aldrich waves from beside a fire, a skinned rabbit turning slowly on a spit. Nearby, a trio of young herders trade exaggerated tales of market mishaps, each story wilder than the last. You find a spot at the camp's edge and settle the geese within a loose ring of stakes and cord. The general watches you set the perimeter, feathers fluffed against the cooling air. You toss him an appreciative glance. No escaping now, you murmur. With the birds secured, you join Aldrich by the fire. He hands you a hunk of coarse bread and a tin cup of thin ale. To another market survived, he says, raising his own cup. You clink cups and drink. The ale is bitter, but it cuts the dust in your throat. The bread vanishes quickly. Travel and tension have left you hungrier than you realized. As you eat, conversation turns to the day's events. Aldrich grins. Saw that Frenchman sniffing around your pen. Good price? Fair enough, you reply, savoring the warmth of the fire. The general lives to honk another day. Laughter ripples around the circle. Another herder leans in. Ever hear of the bishop's goose? You raise an eyebrow. Which bishop? Does it matter? The man says, eyes twinkling. Legend says a certain bishop prized one goose above all others, claimed its honk predicted storms. He supposedly paid a fortune to keep it fed and housed in his manor. Historians still argue whether the tale has any truth. Aldrich chimes in with a smirk, but it makes for fine drinking talk. You chuckle and lean back, the fire's warmth seeping into tired limbs. Around you, the camp hums with quiet life. Pots clink, dogs snuffle, distant laughter floats on the breeze. One cannot escape the darker edges of camp life, however. Not all herders are honest. Disputes over stolen birds or unpaid debts sometimes end in bruised faces or worse. You keep your staff close at hand, as always. Nearby, two young herders argue over a missing gander. Voices rise, and a circle of onlookers gathers. You exchange a look with Aldrich, trouble brewing. Before tempers boil over, the Reeves deputy strides into the camp, his presence enough to scatter the crowd. The deputy patrols these encampments nightly, part peacekeeper, part tax collector, part spy. He nods curtly to your group before moving on. You watch him go, grateful for his timing. A brawl tonight would serve no one. As the fire burns lower, fatigue settles deeper. You excuse yourself and check the flock once more. The geese rest within the cordon, heads tucked beneath wings. The general eyes you briefly before returning to his own feathery vigil. Satisfied, you unroll a thin blanket by the pen and settle onto the rough ground. The stars above are sharp and clear, unmarred by the smoke of the day. You trace familiar patterns in the sky, old companions on countless market nights. Before sleep claims you, a final thought stirs. This brutal art of herding geese, mud, mishaps, and all, is a strange calling, yet it binds you to a lineage stretching back through centuries. A humble thread in the vast tapestry of history, and tomorrow the road calls again. With a last glance at the general, you close your eyes and let the soft hum of camp life lull you toward rest. You wake before dawn, the first pale light just teasing the eastern horizon. Around you, the camp stirs and fits and starts. Low murmurs, the clink of pots, an occasional curse as someone struggles to rouse aching limbs. The ground beneath your blanket is cold and unforgiving, but familiar. You sit up slowly, stretching muscles still stiff from yesterday's labors. The geese are already alert, shifting restlessly within their cordon. The general, of course, stands sentinel, eyes bright, feathers ruffled against the morning chill. You offer a wry smile. Morning, Commander. First things first. Water. You fetch a wooden bucket and head toward a nearby well, passing other herders along the way. Some nod in greeting. Others trudge silently past, burdened by the same bone-deep fatigue you feel. At the well, you draw water in practiced motions. Historians still argue whether herders in different regions shared common watering customs or developed their own rituals over time. Here in this market town, the etiquette is simple. Fill quickly, move aside, no fuss. Returning to your pen, you pour fresh water into a shallow trough. The geese crowd eagerly, dipping beaks and fluttering wings. Watching them, you allow a moment of quiet satisfaction. They have fared well through the journey and the market's chaos. You break a bit of yesterday's bread and chew slowly, eyes scanning the camp. Fires crackle, smoke rising in thin columns against the brightening sky. Already, some herders prepare to depart, eager to reach the next town or return home before roads grow crowded. Aldrich approaches, a bundle slung over one shoulder. Off early? You ask. He nods. Trade good enough. No sense lingering. You exchange farewells. A simple clasp of hands. No need for flowery words. The road will bring you together again soon enough. As Aldrich disappears down the path, you turn back to your own task. The day ahead holds its own demands. Those geese still unsold must either be moved on or returned to your holding grounds. And with each mile comes the risk of theft or mishap. Packing takes little time. You coil the rope, secure your modest belongings, and ensure your coin pouch rests safely beneath your tunic. Then, with a low whistle and a gentle tap of the staff, you signal the geese to form up. They respond with gratifying ease, discipline honed by long hours on the road. The general, naturally, takes the lead. You suspect he would be offended if anyone else tried. As you guide the flock from the encampment, a familiar figure blocks your path. Bertrand, a wiry, sharp-eyed trader known for hovering at the edges of market camps. "Leaving so soon?" he asks, voice oily. "Perhaps I can ease your burden. Buy those stragglers cheap?" You shake your head. "They will fetch better at the next market." Bertrand's smile tightens. "Suit yourself, but the road is not so safe this week." You meet his gaze levelly. "Nor is dealing with thieves." For a moment, tension hums between you. Then Bertrand chuckles and steps aside. You walk on, staff held a little higher than usual. Such encounters are not uncommon. Goose herders must balance caution with confidence. Too soft, and you are marked as prey. Too brash, and trouble finds you quickly. Out on the open road again, you relax fractionally. The air is crisp, the sky clear. The geese settle into their familiar rhythm, feet slapping softly on the packed earth. You pass through a small hamlet where curious children gape at the procession. One daring boy darts forward to pluck a feather. You intercept him gently with your staff and offer a warning smile. The boy retreats, wide-eyed but grinning. A nearby elder calls out, "Good birds, for St. Michael's feast?" "Perhaps," you reply, "or for the scribe's ink pots." He laughs. "Either way, may they travel well." The road stretches ahead, winding through fields of ripening grain. You marvel, as always, at the simple resilience of these birds, adaptable, stubborn, utterly indifferent to the human dramas swirling around them. A curious tidbit floats to mind. In some parts of medieval England, geese were driven barefoot for miles, while in others, their feet were coated with tar and sand to prevent injury. The practice remains a topic of debate among herders even now. You glance at your own flock, barefoot, toughened by weeks of travel. The general struts with undiminished vigor. You suspect he would scoff at tarred feet. Midway through the morning, you pause near a shaded stream. The geese welcome the break, splashing and preening with abandon. You refill your water and take a moment to rest, leaning against a sun-warmed stone. Sleep tugs at your eyes, but you resist. The road demands vigilance, especially near river crossings where bandits sometimes lurk. As you watch the stream, another herder approaches, a young woman driving a small flock of ducks. You exchange nods, fellow travelers bound by the same unspoken code. "Good birds," she remarks. "Yours as well." She hesitates. "Mind company for a stretch?" You gesture to the road. Strength in numbers. Together, You set off, flocks mingling but distinct. Conversation flows easily. News of distant markets, rumors of plague upriver, the latest tax levied by the Lord's men. Historians still argue whether such impromptu alliances among herders shaped broader trade networks. You believe they did. On the road, trust is a currency as valuable as coin. As the sun climbs higher, you part ways with a nod of thanks and a promise to share a fire at the next market. By midday, a crossroads appears, one path leading home, another toward a larger town where quill buyers gather. You pause, weighing your options. The road ahead is longer, but offers better prices. The road home promises rest. You glance at the general. His gaze is steady, expectant. A wry grin tugs at your lips. Very well. Forward we go. With a tap of the staff, you set your course toward the distant town. The road is long, the burden's real, but this is the life you have chosen. And today, at least, you walk it with coin in your pouch, geese at your heels, and the quiet pride of one who has mastered a brutal, ancient art. You navigate the winding road with steady steps, the general leading your flock like a seasoned commander. The morning sun grows warmer, casting dappled light through the trees that fringe the path. The earthy scent of damp soil and fresh grass mingles with the faint musk of your geese, a strangely comforting combination. You feel the rhythm of the road settle into your bones, a constant, reassuring pulse. Passing under an ancient oak, you recall that medieval markets often sprang up around such landmarks, places considered sacred or symbolically important. The tree's gnarled roots twist like time itself, grounding you in centuries of tradition. Historians still argue whether the location of these markets was chosen for practicality or superstition, but either way, the legacy remains. Your mind drifts briefly to the curious role of geese in medieval folklore. The birds were believed to ward off evil spirits with their loud honks and watchful eyes, a kind of living alarm system for farms and villages. You chuckle softly, imagining your flock as a squadron of feathered guardians, each one ready to sound the call at the slightest provocation. A sudden rustle in the underbrush snaps you back to the present. You grip your staff firmly, eyes scanning the shadows. A fox darts out, pausing to regard you with gleaming eyes before slipping away into the brush. You relax, but the encounter reminds you how vulnerable the flock can be on open roads. Further along, the landscape opens into rolling fields of barley and oats, golden and heavy with harvest. The sight lifts your spirits. You know that soon, the town will come into view, with its bustling market square and clamorous trade. Midway through the afternoon, a peculiar sight catches your eye. A young boy chasing a stray goose that has broken formation. You hurry to help, gently corralling the bird with practiced ease. The boy, flushed and breathless, thanks you shyly. My father sends me to learn from the best, he says, eyes wide with admiration. You give him a small smile and a tip of your hat. Keep close, and you might survive market day. The boy laughs, and you feel a warm flicker of hope for the future. Perhaps the brutal art of herding geese will continue, carried forward by new hands. As the sun begins its descent, the town silhouette emerges on the horizon, turrets and rooftops outlined against the burning sky. The geese pick up their pace, sensing the approach of familiar chaos and opportunity. You prepare yourself for the coming evening, the delicate dance of negotiating, herding, and survival that awaits within the stone walls. But for now, you savor this quiet moment on the road, geese at your heels, a cool breeze on your face, and the endless sky above. The town's gates loom ahead, tall and imposing, a reminder that even the most peaceful market days exist under watchful authority. As you approach, the geese grow restless, their honks rising in a chorus that echoes off the stone walls. You tap your staff gently against the ground, signaling them to steady down. The general caws sharply, and the flock quiets, falling into formation once more. Passing through the gate, you are swallowed by the buzz of activity, vendors hawking goods, townsfolk bargaining loudly, children darting between carts, and the ever-present smell of roasting meats and damp straw. It is a sensory overload, the kind that can wear down even the most seasoned herder. You maneuver your flock carefully through the maze of stalls, mindful of stray dogs and careless children who might spook the birds. The geese are surprisingly tolerant of the chaos, but you know it is only a matter of time before a stray shout or sudden movement sends them scattering. In the midst of the crowd, you spot familiar faces, other herders, traders, and local officials. A nod here, a quick word there, all part of the unspoken network that keeps this world turning. Historians still argue whether medieval markets served primarily as economic hubs or social arenas. But standing here amidst the cacophony, you understand they are both. A place where fortunes are made, alliances forged, and reputations built or broken. Your eyes catch a stall draped with feathers and leather, where a grizzled man sharpens knives and mends harnesses. He nods at you, offering a brief smile. Tools are essential. A broken staff or tether can mean disaster. You pause at a trough where a few geese are being sold. The prices here are higher, reflecting the town's wealth and demand. You count your coin carefully, knowing each penny earned is hard-won. A sudden commotion draws your attention. A young woman's goose has escaped, causing a flurry of chasing and honking. You step in, corralling the bird with deft hands before it causes a real panic. The woman thanks you breathlessly, her cheeks flushed from the excitement. Market days are always like this, you say with a tired smile. As the afternoon wanes, you negotiate sales, barter for supplies, and keep a wary eye on the flock. The general remains ever vigilant, a silent sentinel amidst the frenzy. Between deals, you overhear snippets of gossip, news of a bandit gang preying on market caravans, rumors of an approaching plague, disputes over tolls levied by the local lord. Such tales remind you that beneath the market's lively surface lies a world of danger and uncertainty. You share a quiet joke with a fellow herder about the time a rival lost an entire flock to a sudden thunderstorm, feathers flying like confetti. Laughter bubbles up, a brief respite from the day's stress. By evening, the market's energy begins to wane. Vendors pack up, townsfolk retreat to their homes, and the streets grow quieter. You gather your remaining geese, preparing to move on or find lodging for the night. The brutal art of herding geese on market day is far from glamorous. But as you look around at the community bound together by shared toil, you feel a profound connection, a thread linking past to present, hardship to hope. As dusk settles, the town takes on a different character. Shadows lengthen, lanterns flicker to life, and the cacophony of market day softens into a quieter, more intimate rhythm. You lead your flock toward a small stable yard just beyond the town's edge, a familiar spot where herders often rest their animals overnight. The air cools rapidly, carrying hints of wood smoke and wet earth. You begin the ritual of securing the geese for the night. The birds are restless after a long day, their feathers puffed up against the chill. The general waddles around, issuing low, commanding honks that seem to settle the flock. You smile. He really does believe he is in charge, though you know better. As you tether a few of the strays, your mind wanders to the strange customs of medieval herding. In some regions, herders would use bells or whistles to keep track of their birds, while elsewhere, trained dogs assisted in the task. Here, it is mostly the staff and voice, old-fashioned but effective. Historians still argue whether these methods evolved from necessity or tradition, but from where you stand, they work well enough until they do not. A sudden squawk from the edge of the pen draws your attention. A goose has slipped free and is flapping wildly near the shadows. You move quickly, staff raised to guide it back, but the bird darts past you, skittering toward the wooden fence. With a quick lunge, you catch its wing and steady it. A sigh of relief escapes you. Tonight, the geese will remain contained. Nearby, a fellow herder lights a small fire, the flickering flames casting warm glows on weathered faces. You accept an offered piece of bread, breaking it quietly while exchanging news of the day. The camaraderie is a welcome balm against the harshness of the road. The topic turns to market rumors, a strange illness spreading in a neighboring village, whispered warnings of bandits growing bolder, and an upcoming festival promising unusual celebrations. You listen, the stories weaving into the fabric of your own journey. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some say the geese's honking was once thought to ward off the plague itself. You chuckle softly. Superstitions rarely harm, but they rarely help either. As night deepens, the herders settle into silence. The crackling fire, the only sound besides the occasional murmur from the geese. You lay back against a worn wooden beam, eyes tracing the stars, peeking through gaps in the roof. Sleep beckons, but you resist for a moment longer, savoring the peaceful pause. Tomorrow will bring fresh challenges, long roads, vigilant eyes, and the endless dance of keeping the flock intact. For now, you breathe in the night's cool air, letting the weariness seep into your bones. The brutal art of herding geese is a constant test of patience and skill, but moments like these remind you why you endure. The first light of dawn filters softly through the cracks in the stable walls. You awaken to the gentle chorus of geese greeting the new day, a symphony of honks and rustling feathers that stirs something deep within you. Stretching slowly, you feel the lingering aches of yesterday's trek, but welcome the familiar routine ahead. You rise and begin preparing the flock for departure. Each goose moves with a purposeful grace, as if knowing the road calls again. The general stands proud, surveying the pen like a seasoned captain, ready to set sail. As you gather your gear, you overhear a nearby conversation among the other herders. They debate the best routes for the season, weighing the dangers of bandits against the tolls imposed by local lords. The strategies differ widely. Some prefer longer, quieter paths through forests. Others brave the main roads for the chance of better trade. Historians still argue whether medieval herders had formalized routes or relied largely on oral tradition and instinct. You lean toward the latter. After all, no map can predict the whims of weather or the cunning of thieves. You release the geese into a tight formation and set off down the road. The morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of dew-soaked earth and blooming wildflowers. The world feels fresh, renewed. Along the way, you encounter a traveling minstrel who pauses to watch the procession with amused interest. He offers a light-hearted tune about a goose who outwitted a fox, drawing smiles from you and the other herders nearby. Such stories lighten the harshness of the road, reminding you that even in brutal labor, there is room for humor. A quirky detail crosses your mind. In some medieval festivals, geese were paraded as symbols of fertility and prosperity, their presence believed to bring luck to the harvest. The idea seems at odds with the tough reality of market day herding, but both sides of the coin shape this ancient relationship. As the sun climbs higher, the road leads you through a patchwork of villages, each with its own character and customs. Children run alongside, calling out greetings, while elders nod solemnly, acknowledging the hard work you bear. The journey is interrupted by a sudden downpour, fat droplets turning the dirt road to mud, challenging your footing and the geese's patience. You shelter beneath a gnarled tree, waiting for the storm to pass, counting the moments as the world turns silver in the rain. The storm brings a moment of reflection. How many others have walked this path before you, facing the same elements, the same trials? The brutal art of herding geese is a tapestry woven through time, each thread telling a story of endurance. As the skies clear, you press onward, the geese shaking droplets from their feathers and settling back into their rhythm. The road stretches ahead, long and uncertain, but you face it with steady resolve. The afternoon sun beats down with increasing intensity as you and your geese continue along the dusty road. Sweat beads at your brow, and the ground beneath your feet grows hard and cracked. The geese, usually hardy creatures, begin to slow. Their panting honks a subtle plea for respite. You scan the horizon for a patch of shade, hoping for a brief sanctuary. Up ahead, a thin ribbon of smoke curls from a humble farmhouse nestled between fields. You decide to make for it, welcoming the chance to rest and refresh both yourself and the flock. Approaching the farmhouse, you are greeted by an elderly woman who offers water and a place to cool down. Her kindness is a rare gift in this harsh world, and you accept gratefully. The geese eagerly drink from a trough, their feathers shimmering wet under the sunlight. As you settle on a wooden bench, the woman shares tales of her own youth, when markets were smaller but fiercer, and herding was often a family affair. She tells you about a peculiar tradition. On market days, geese were sometimes dressed in ribbons or bells to make them more attractive to buyers. The sight must have been both charming and chaotic. Historians still debate whether such adornments were purely decorative or held deeper symbolic meaning. Perhaps they were early marketing ploys, or maybe superstitions aimed at protecting the flock. You chuckle quietly at the thought, watching the geese preen contentedly. A few stragglers wander near the garden, pecking curiously at bright flowers, their honks blending with the hum of bees. Refreshed, you thank the woman and prepare to move on. She offers a small token, a sprig of lavender, to carry good fortune on your journey. You tuck it into your pouch, a fragrant reminder of unexpected kindness. The road beckons once more, and you gather the flock with renewed energy. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The fields stretch out like a golden sea, promising both challenges and rewards. You take a deep breath, savoring the fleeting peace before the inevitable hustle of the next market. The brutal art of herding geese may be relentless, but moments like these are treasures to hold on to. The sky deepens into a rich shade of amber as you press onward, the evening air cooling, but still carrying the faint scent of earth and hay. Your legs ache, and the geese seem to feel the strain too, their steady pace faltering in places. You glance around. The road narrows here, hemmed in by dense hedgerows and ancient stone walls that have weathered centuries. You remember that medieval roads were often little more than dirt tracks, prone to becoming muddy quagmires after rain, and the thought makes your careful footing feel a little more justified. Historians still argue whether the maintenance of these roads was the responsibility of local lords or the peasants themselves, but either way, you know firsthand how challenging they could be. A sudden rustling from the bushes sets your heart pounding. A fox? A wild dog? You raise your staff and step forward cautiously, ready to defend your flock. To your relief, a stray cat emerges, blinking up at you with disinterest before trotting away. You let out a shaky breath, your pulse settling back to a steady beat. The geese, oblivious to the momentary scare, continue their march, honking softly. The general struts ahead, proud and vigilant. As night falls, you come upon a small village preparing for the evening feast. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread drifts through the air, tempting and comforting. You stop briefly, allowing the geese to rest and nibble on scattered grain offered by kindly villagers. You exchange greetings with a few locals who share tales of recent bandit attacks on market caravans. Such dangers are an ever-present shadow on your journey. The brutality of medieval trade extends beyond the physical demands of herding. It is a constant dance with risk. A quirky detail catches your ear. A villager mentions a superstition that geese could sense danger and even predict storms. You smile, thinking back to your own encounters with sudden weather shifts and the flock's uncanny restlessness before rain. The night deepens, and with renewed determination, you gather the geese once more. The path ahead is dark and uncertain, but you move forward, driven by the unspoken promise of market day's end and the hope of safe rest. The brutal art of herding geese is a test not only of skill, but of endurance and trust, a bond between you and your feathered charges that carries you through each day's trials. The moon hangs low and silver as you lead your flock through the final stretch of road before the next market town. The quiet night wraps around you like a cloak, broken only by the gentle rustling of feathers and the soft padding of webbed feet on cobblestones. Your senses heighten. The dark brings new dangers, but also a strange serenity. Medieval towns after dusk could be as treacherous as the roads between them. Street lighting was minimal, often just flickering torches or oil lamps, and the shadows hid both mischief and menace. You adjust your grip on the staff, alert for any sign of trouble. Historians still argue whether night herding was common practice or avoided when possible, but for you, it is a necessary risk. The geese seem to sense the tension, bunching closer as the town's faint lights twinkle ahead. You recall a quirky fact from your reading. Some medieval markets had designated goose guards, hired specifically to protect the flocks from thieves and stray dogs during night hours. Such precautions speak to the value and vulnerability of these animals. As you enter the town's outskirts, a stray dog barks sharply, causing a ripple of alarm through the flock. You raise your voice in calm but firm commands, the geese responding to your tone. The general honks sharply, asserting his presence. Passing through narrow alleys lined with half-timbered houses, you notice signs of life. Windows illuminated by candlelight, laughter drifting faintly from taverns. Despite the looming danger, the town breathes warmth and community. You pause briefly at a well, filling your water flask and allowing the geese to drink. A pair of guards eye you warily, but nod at your respectful greeting. The medieval market may be brutal, but here, order is maintained, at least for now. The flock is weary, their pace slowed, but steady. You marvel at their resilience, honks echoing softly in the night air. The brutal art of herding geese demands both patience and resolve, qualities you have learned to nurture in equal measure. Ahead lies the market square, soon to be bustling again with dawn's first light. But for now, you savor this quiet passage, shadows and feathers, moonlight and murmurs, before the day's frenzy resumes. Dawn's first pale light slips through the narrow windows of the market inn where you've secured lodging for the night. The geese rest quietly in a nearby pen, feathers ruffled but peaceful after the long night. You feel the ache of countless miles in your bones, but also a deep satisfaction. The brutal art of herding geese has brought you safely to another market. You rise and stretch, the cool morning air filling your lungs. Outside, the town stirs to life, the sound of carts rolling over cobblestones, vendors shouting their wares, and the unmistakable honking of geese blending into the morning chorus. Breakfast is a simple affair: coarse bread, sharp cheese, and a mug of watered ale. the innkeeper offers a friendly nod, a reminder that in this harsh world, small kindnesses mean everything. As you prepare to lead the flock into the bustling square, you overhear merchants debating prices and traders arguing over quality. The medieval market is a lively arena where fortunes can be made or lost in a single transaction. Historians still argue whether markets primarily served local needs or acted as hubs for long-distance trade. From your vantage point, both are true. This is a crossroads of commerce and community. You notice a quirky tradition unfolding nearby, a goose race, where townsfolk wager small coins on which bird will reach the finish line first. The sight is both charming and chaotic, geese flapping wildly as laughter and cheers erupt around them. You smile, reminded that even in the midst of toil, moments of joy find their way. Your focus returns to the flock. Buyers circle, examining feathers, probing legs, and assessing health. The general stands tall, his feathers gleaming in the morning light, a proud ambassador for the entire group. Negotiations are tense but fair. You barter skillfully, aware that each sale contributes to your livelihood and the survival of your family. The brutal art of herding geese culminates here, in the heat of the market, where patience, wit, and endurance are tested against human greed and fortune's fickle hand. By midday, your flock has found new homes, and you feel the bittersweet mix of relief and loss. Tomorrow will bring the same challenges, the same uncertainties, but also the same stubborn hope. With the market day winding down, you gather what remains of your strength and prepare to move on. The streets begin to empty as merchants pack away their goods, and the once boisterous square settles into a quieter, more contemplative space. You look over the fewer geese left, some sold, some lost, some tucked away for later trade. The evening carries a bittersweet scent, satisfaction mixed with fatigue, accomplishment tempered by the awareness that tomorrow will demand the same brutal patience. The medieval market is never truly done. It pulses with the rhythms of countless lives tied to commerce and survival. As you lead the flock toward the town's exit, you notice a group of children playing nearby, their laughter ringing clear against the cobbled stones. They toss scraps and cheer as a stray goose waddles into their game, a small moment of levity amid the day's grind. Historians still debate whether children's roles in medieval markets were purely recreational or a part of informal labor, but it is clear they were woven into the fabric of daily life, learning early the harsh realities and occasional joys of the world they would inherit. You pause to watch a traveling puppeteer entertaining a small crowd, his marionettes enacting tales of trickster geese and clever farmers. The performance is a reminder of how folklore and humor soften the edges of hardship, providing respite in the face of relentless toil. A quirky piece of lore surfaces. Some medieval herders believed that geese could detect thieves by their behavior, honking wildly as a warning. Whether true or superstition, you find it comforting, relying on your own senses and the flock's instincts alike. The road ahead is dark and long, but you are ready. The brutal art of herding geese is not just a physical challenge, but a mental one, demanding endurance, vigilance, and a stubborn streak of hope. You set off, the geese following closely, their silhouettes a familiar, reassuring sight against the fading light. Night drapes the countryside in velvet darkness as you navigate narrow lanes between farms and fields, the air thick with the scent of damp grass and earth. The geese move quietly, their honks reduced to occasional murmurs as fatigue settles over the flock. You walk beside them, your staff tapping a steady rhythm on the ground, a heartbeat guiding you through the gloom. Traveling at night is a gamble. The shadows can hide danger or provide cover. You remain alert, every sound amplified, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of a wolf, the soft steps of your own boots. The medieval world was as much about managing fear as managing animals. Historians still argue whether nighttime travel for herders was common or a desperate measure. For you, it is sometimes the only way to avoid the heat of day and the watchful eyes of highwaymen. A curious medieval practice crosses your mind. Some herders would carry small charms or tokens believed to protect their flocks from evil spirits and misfortune. You finger the lavender sprig tucked into your pouch, a comforting reminder of human hope in the face of uncertainty. Suddenly, a faint glow flickers in the distance, a lone farmhouse lantern, a beacon of safety. You quicken your pace, leading the geese toward the welcoming light. The familiar warmth of hearth and home promises rest and refuge. Inside, you find a kind family who offer food and shelter. Their hospitality is a balm to your weary soul, a momentary oasis in the brutal world you navigate. As you settle in, you watch the geese settle around the barn's warm corners, feathers soft and bodies relaxed. The day's trials fade as sleep beckons, wrapping you in a gentle embrace. The brutal art of herding geese is a story of endurance, of small victories and quiet courage. Tonight, you savor this hard-earned peace, knowing tomorrow will bring new challenges. Morning comes slowly, the first rays of sunlight filtering through gaps in the barn walls. You awaken to the familiar sounds of the flock stirring, soft rustles, contented honks, the occasional flap of wings. You rise with a groan, muscles aching, but spirit steadied by the promise of another day. Outside, the farm is already alive with activity. Chickens cluck and scratch in the dirt. A cow lows softly from a nearby pen, and the farmer's children dart about with bundles of fresh hay. The air smells of dew and wood smoke, a grounding reminder of life's simple rhythms. You thank your hosts with a few coins and heartfelt words, then gather the geese once more. The flock is smaller now, yet each bird moves with a quiet resilience. The general stands tall as ever, feathers gleaming, ready to lead. Historians still argue whether herders in your position were viewed with respect or disdain by medieval society. You have learned it is often both. Some admire your endurance, others only the dirt and the smell, forgetting the vital role you play in keeping markets supplied and bellies fed. As you step onto the road, your thoughts drift to the strange beauty of this life. The brutal art of herding geese is not just about survival or commerce. It is about connection. You have learned to read your flock's moods, to trust your instincts, to find humor in hardship and peace in moments of quiet. A quirky memory surfaces. In certain festivals, geese were paraded through town streets, crowned with garlands, their honks celebrated as joyful music. You smile at the thought, imagining your ragtag flock dressed in ribbons, the general strutting like royalty. The road stretches ahead, winding toward the next market, the next challenge. You walk with steady steps, staff in hand, geese following faithfully. The world is wide, and this path, though often lonely, is yours. As the day unfolds, you embrace the flow of life on the road. Each mile walked, each obstacle overcome, weaves you deeper into a lineage of herders who have plied their craft through centuries of change and adversity. The brutal art of herding geese continues, an endless dance of patience, skill, and quiet determination. And as long as markets thrive and geese honk beneath the sun and stars, so too will this ancient, humble journey. And now, as your mind drifts through the images of long-forgotten roads, weary footsteps, and the soft rustling of feathers beneath the fading sky, let the story begin to settle gently within you. You can almost hear the calm nighttime honks of the flock as they rest under a starlit barn roof, each bird a tiny echo of the countless creatures herded through the winding paths of history. The weary herder, perhaps a little like yourself, leans back against an old wooden beam, eyes growing heavy, the ache of the journey giving way to a slow, deep contentment. Allow yourself to linger here, in this softened world of lantern-lit streets and dusty roads, where even the harshest labors carry moments of grace. The tools of the trade, weathered staff, trusted whistle, worn boots, rest quietly now, their work done for the day. And as your breath evens and your body relaxes, imagine the road ahead stretching gently into the dawn, not as a burden, but as a promise. The geese will honk again. The market will bustle. But for now, there is only this moment, peaceful, unhurried, yours. Let the last echoes of the story fade like distant footsteps on a quiet lane. You are safe, your journey paused, wrapped in the soft embrace of night. Sleep well, traveler.